Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a real pleasure to be able to participate today in this Delphi forum. Giving a speech here in Delphi might raise false expectations. People might think of the famous oracle of Delphi and expect far-reaching prophecies. Well, I am not the Pythia, and I will certainly be less prophetic, but hopefully a bit clearer. The first point that I will make is this. We need banks. I know that many people are suspicious of banks because of their role during the crisis. But still, we need them. Banks form the hub of Europe's economy, for better or for worse. Who do you turn to when you need money to buy a home? Who do you turn to when you want to build a factory? Here in Europe, you would probably turn to a bank. Banks play a critical role for all of us, and thus for the entire economy. If the banks don't function, neither does the economy. That's the lessons we have learned from the financial crisis and at great cost. What we need are stable and profitable banks, managed by responsible and capable bankers. Regarding the stability of banks, we have come a long way. Just at the end of last year, the final piece of the global regulatory reform was put into place. Basel III was finalized. In respect of Europe, you can include all the progress made with the banking union. The result is a regulatory and institutional framework that will make the banking sector much safer. That is a necessary condition, but it is not sufficient. Banks need to be both stable and profitable. They need to follow the rules and succeed in the market. And in that regard, European banks face many challenges these days. But these challenges are also opportunities. So let's consider the full picture, and in doing so, take a closer look at the Greek banks. When discussing banks, no two banks are alike, and each bank faces its own challenges. That said, there are challenges which affect so many banks that they can be seen as universal challenges. And universal in this case means European. Some of these challenges stem from the financial crisis. In many countries, banks are still weighed down by legacy assets on their balance sheets. Non-performing loans are certainly the most obvious example. Then there is the long period of low interest rates. Given that interest income makes up a large part of banks' operating income, low rates are a major challenge. And there is a challenge which many banks would rank first, but I don't, stronger regulation. Yes, complying with stricter rules put pressure on banks. But considering the heavy burden that the crisis imposed on people, on the economy across Europe, this is, in my view, an acceptable price. In addition to these crisis-related challenges, there are new ones, such as technological change, which many people would put at the top of their list. The business of banking is not immune to the digital transformation, and the banks were not the first to realize this. It seems that new competitors were quicker to see how new technology could be applied to banking. These fintechs now pose a challenge to the incumbents. It remains to be seen how all this plays out, but one thing is certain, it is another challenge banks have to deal with. Taken together, all these trials and tribulations are reflected in the profits or losses of banks. That is the overarching issue. Banks in the euro area are still struggling to earn their cost of capital. And I would go as far as to say that profitability is the number one challenge of European banks. And before all this becomes too depressing, let us look at the bright side of life for European banks. Also, they indeed face many challenges. Now is the ideal time to tackle them for several reasons. First, euro area economy is growing. It has been doing so for almost 5 years, and it will most likely continue to do so in 2018. Second, technological change is both a challenge and an opportunity. It offers new sources of income for those banks that act quickly. Third, there is regulatory certainty. As I said before, the regulatory reform is now finalized. On that basis, banks can plan for the future. And fourth, there is also supervisory certainty. We are in the 4th year of European banking supervision. Banks have got used to their new supervisors and to their methods and policies. European banking supervision has become, to a certain degree, business as usual. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, in a nutshell, the situation of European banks. Now let's focus on Greek banks. What we see is that Greek banks face many of the challenges and opportunities of their counterparts elsewhere in Europe. Yet at the same time, they are in a special situation. The economic and sovereign debt crisis in Greece were deeper than in most other countries. A stability support program is still in place, and so are capital controls. All this affects the banks, of course. They were hit hard by the crisis. Some failed, some needed to be recapitalized, and some needed emergency liquidity assistance from the central bank, ELA for short, to keep going. However, change is underway as conditions are improving. The Greek economy is recovering, the stability support program is scheduled to end in August, and capital controls will be gradually eased and eventually lifted. But it's not just the conditions that are improving. Greek banks have come a long way too. For one thing, they have built up their capital buffers and they have stabilized their funding. ELA was for a long time the defining characteristics of banking Greek crisis. But the banks have come less and less dependent on it. In 2017, the volume of emergency liquidity declined by more than 50%. The banks are turning away from the central bank for funding and towards the markets. Depositors, for instance, have started to come back. And once the capital controls are lifted, they might have even more incentive to deposit their money with Greek banks. In addition to stabilizing their capital and funding, Greek banks have carried out structural reforms. In particular, they have overhauled their boards of directors. They have brought in new managers, which are independent and experienced. That was an important first step towards better governance. But the new board still have to deliver, which is not all easy. They need to initiate a change in culture, they need to further improve governance, and they need to put the banks on the right track. So challenges remain. And the biggest one for Greek banks is not theirs alone, but one they share with many banks elsewhere in the euro area, non-performing loans, NPLs for short. Given that NPLs affect so many banks across the euro area, I will discuss them in more detail. At close to 50%, Greece has the highest ratio of non-performing loans in the euro area, and this is a huge problem. NPLs are a drag on profits. They cause staff and other resources to be diverted from more productive activities. Greek banks exemplify this dilemma. In the aggregate, the pre-provisioning profits look quite reasonable. But once provisions on NPLs are taken into account, profits turn into losses. And NPLs are not just a problem for banks. They also keep banks from providing new loans to the economy. And this, in turn, keeps the economy from growing. This is of particular concern to the Greek economy, which is still recovering. While Greece is in a special situation, the problems caused by NPLs are widespread. It's true that the level of NPLs in the euro area has gone down over the past few years. But with 760 billion, it is still very big, very high. That's why it's a top priority for European banking supervision in Greece and across the rest of the euro area. Our approach is made up of three elements. The first one is the qualitative guidance to banks, which we published in March 2017. This guidance brings together best practices and sets out how we expect banks to deal with NPLs. It thus serves as a basis for the banks to devise their own NPL strategies, and it serves as a basis for supervisors to assess the bank strategies. These assessments feed into the second element of our approach, a dialogue between supervisors and banks. This dialogue has been going on for some time now, and at the end of 2017, we provided banks with formal feedback on their strategies. But this is not the end, of course. The dialogue will continue in 2018. The third element, finally, is an addendum to our guidance. We published a draft version for public consultation back in October, and it seems fair to say that it sparked a heated debate. So let me explain why we think we need the addendum or what is intended it is intended to achieve. The addendum sets out how we expect banks to provision new NPLs. And here, two things are important but sometimes misunderstood. First, the addendum is about new non-performing exposures, not new loan like the compulsory part to come, the ECOFIN measures, the legislative package. Second, banks will not have to fully provision these loans right away. Unsecured loans that become non-performing will need to be fully provisioned after 2 years, and secured loan after 7 years, which is quite a lot, in fact, if we compare with international standards. The general purpose of the addendum is to prevent the recurrence of new NPL and of the NPL problem as a result. Given the scale of the current problem, everyone should subscribe to this goal. Yet, as I said, the draft addendum sparked a heated debate. This debate is reflected in the large number of comments we received during the public consultation, around 450 comments altogether. We have assessed all these comments, and we will adapt the addendum accordingly. Among other things, we will take into account the legal concerns that were raised. It's a case-by-case decisions that will be taken for each bank. And we have shifted the cut-off date, which was supposed to be 1st January, so now will be after the final publication. And this final publication is expected around mid-March, so it is coming, and banks should get ready for it. We supervisors support the banks in their efforts to reduce NPLs. At the end of the day, however, it is the banks themselves that have to take action. As for Greek banks, they have made progress, but more so, some more so than others. There is a catch, however. In their plans, the banks envisage to reduce their NPLs by a greater amount each year. So they have to step up their effort as well to obtain this result. But NPLs are not just an issue for banks and supervisors. The legal and judicial framework should also be enhanced in order to facilitate a more rapid resolution of NPLs. This includes action in areas such as insolvency regimes, debt enforcement, and out-of-court restructuring. In these areas, Greece has passed new laws, which is encouraging. However, passing new laws is just the first step. They also need to be implemented and applied. And here it seems that things could move faster. One example concerns the framework for repossessing or liquidating collateral. How easily can banks make use of the collateral posted by their debtors? If they cannot use it, it is useless. It has to be considered unsecured. Until recently, banks could only conduct physical auctions of collateral, and these were often cancelled due to strikes or obstruction by activist groups. Thus, the Greek parliament decided to phase out physical auctions and replace them with electronic ones. This was a sensible step. However, the new system needs to be swiftly implemented, and I understand that it has been recently, that there was one operation. And it's good, I give credit for that, but it has to go on, and it needs to cover the whole of Greece, and not only some regions. Moreover, the Greek authorities need to protect notaries involved in electronic auctions, as they have become the targets of violent attacks in recent weeks. Once electronic auctions work properly, they should prompt defaulting debtors to talk to their banks and hopefully find mutually acceptable solutions. And here I am thinking of strategic defaulters, as we call them in our jargon in particular, namely people or corporates that could service their debt but adopt a wait-and-see policy in the hope that at the end they can avoid paying at least part of their debt. More generally, the new system will help to change the culture of servicing and repaying loans. Such a cultural shift will take time, but it is absolutely necessary. Non-performing loans are the weakest link in the Greek banking system. There is no doubt about that. It is crucial that Greek banks clean up their balance sheets. The upcoming stress test for banks will also play a role here. To give you some background, this year the European Banking Authority, the EBA, will conduct a stress test on European banks. The aim of this test is to check how resilient banks are to economic and financial shocks. Altogether, the EBA stress test covers 37 banks in the euro area, the 33 banks in the EBA sample, plus the 4 Greek banks. But there is a slight difference in respect of the Greek banks. For them, the stress test will be conducted earlier than for the other banks. While the results of the EBA sample will be published in November, we will publish the result of the Greek banks in May, before the end of the Stability Support Programme. For banks across the euro area, the stress test will be a moment of truth, no doubt about that. But it will also be an opportunity to clean up balance sheet, increase resilience, and prepare for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now conclude by saying that there are not easy times to be a banker in Europe. These are not easy times. The entire sector faces a number of challenges. At the same time, however, conditions are very promising for dealing with all these challenges. This is also true for Greek banks. They felt very sick during the crisis and spent quite some time in intensive care, but since then, their condition has stabilized. All the metrics are gradually returning to normal levels. However, just like someone who was sick for a long time, Greek banks are still a bit weak. It will take time and determination for them to make a full recovery. But as in the rest of the euro area, the conditions in Greece are good, and as we are in Delphi, it seems appropriate to say that the omens are favorable. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Nui, and also especially for ending on a positive note, both for us here in Greece, but also for the Eurozone. You've put down many challenges in front of us, but also many opportunities. Now, Mrs. Nui has a tight schedule in terms of having to depart early and not be able to join us for the rest of the panel, but she has kindly offered to take 1 or 2 questions. So as not to take any more time, I open the floor for questions. Yes.
Ευχαριστώ, Παγενίδης. May I ask the question in English? Very heartening comment and optimistic comment, but still we have had the experience of 2 or 3 stress test waves in Greece, which found our banks more or less well, and then a few months later, we had recapitalization routines. It's becoming a routine for Greece. So when waiting for the results of the new stress tests in May, have we reason to be fairly anxious, fairly confident, or what? Thank you.
I have no crystal ball on the stress tests. I have not started, so I will not do any prophecy for any bank, not only for Greek banks. Let's see what the outcome will be. Each time the scenarios are different. They are prepared by EBA with the support of the European ESRB Stability Fund. So we will see what it means when it is implemented for banks. I cannot say more.
Okay, so Mrs. Nui has refused to take the role of the modern Pythia in Delphi. Let's go for a second question now. Yes, please.
Dimitri Plafanis from Insider.gr. Mrs. Nui, you mentioned that the NPLs are universal challenge. Do you have in mind, or do you think it would be possible to implement a more universal solution either on a national or on a European level, i.e. a bad bank?
Well, I know that EBA had a project for European asset management company / bad bank, well, possibility to sell NPLs at a European level. It's one tool that can work. There are so many such non-performing loans within the euro area that we need all the tools that we can have. Some of these loans have to be restructured to be performing. Some probably have to be provisioned and maybe sold. Others can, there are different ways of selling those loans. So all the tools that exist are useful, depending on of course, the characteristics of the non-performing exposure, because you have retailers, you have SMEs, you have corporates, borrowers. That's different for these different categories of borrowers, and it's different even for retailers between consumer credit and mortgages. So we need all the tools that we can have to fix this big European issue. Yes, why not?
Maybe one last one, if there are any questions. Yes, in the back there we have. And that's the last one.
Thank you for this. So I would like to ask a question about the future of the European Central Bank. As you know, the bank sector across Europe is ripe for change and disruption. There is the so-called fintech industry. Banks are changing, they're changing form. So you have companies like TransferWise and so forth in the UK and other countries. What is the supervisory, let's say, pattern there? Are we going to impose the same rules and regulations that we do in banks, or are they operating on a more flexible basis to allow fintech companies to grow across Europe? Are they safe to grow, or are they threatening us, the system, with disruption? Thank you so much.
Well, a bank is a bank, and we want to implement a level playing field on consistency in our requirements. The difference between fintechs and the classical banks is that fintechs use very much technology on IT to deliver banking services, but they are still banks, so they have to get a license, and there are conditions for the license. Then we have, when we are doing supervision, to take into account all the characteristics of a bank. So, for example, for a fintech bank, we will expect the board of directors to incorporate more IT specialists than we would expect in a classical bank operating through branches. This is the kind of differences that can be put in place, and that are already put in place depending on the different kinds of banks that we have. But for the rest, a fintech bank is a bank and will have to comply with the same rules as the banks.
Okay, with this note, I would like to thank very much Mrs. Nui for being here with us, taking the time to talk to us, and I would like to wish her a good trip back. Thank you very much.
So much.